We are here for our first panel of the day, How We Got Here, Real Pathways into the Games Industry, presented by Big Ant, our platinum sponsor for Sage 2026. So Big Ant, originally founded in the year 2000, opened an office in South Australia in 2023. They currently have 27 staff and work on a variety of licensed sports titles, AFL, cricket, rugby league, all the sports that I was picked in last in high school, they have worked across. And they have done some really cool and interesting stuff. So this panel, we will be talking to several members of the Big Ant team. We will be going through some of the pathways that they took into the industry and into their current jobs. And learning a lot more about how we all got here on this stage today. So my name is James O'Connor. I am the chair of this panel. I am a freelance writer and consultant, but I was also the previous game development executive at the South Australian Film Corporation, where I met Mark and many other talented developers at Big Ant. So we're going to go down the line first, and everyone's going to introduce themselves. I would love to hear each of you, if you could say what your name is, what your job title is, and some examples of what you have worked on with Big Ant.
So my name's Chiara. I'm a 3D character artist, and some of the titles that I've worked on include Tiebreak. My first one was actually AFL 23, and I've worked across a variety of all of our sports franchises. So my main role is to work on the uniforms, all the kits for all of the clubs in all the games. I've also worked on cricket bats in the past, scrum caps as well, which are the rugby headgear that protect their heads and ears. And I've also worked on the player faces and general appearance of players.
Hello, my name is Johnson. I'm an environment artist at Big Ant. I've mainly been working on stadiums for every single one of our titles. So if you've played one of our games and if you've seen our stadiums, I've probably touched it a little bit. Most recently in Cricket 26, if you go into the career mode, I've worked on the first locker room and a couple other of the locker rooms as well. So that's that.
Hi, I'm Johnna. I'm also a character artist at Big Ant Studios, and I've worked on Tiebreak, Rugby League, AFL, and similar to Chiara, I've worked on several uniforms and players throughout each title.
Hi, I'm Mark Bracken. I'm COO of Big Ant and studio head of Adelaide. I work on all the games and make sure their progress is going through and make sure they're of a quality standard that we release on.
Fantastic. So I'd love to go back to the beginning to start with. So was there a point in each of your lives where you remember that you realized you wanted to work in games?
So I basically owned a Wii and a PS3 back in the day. So I really enjoyed playing, especially Ratatouille. That was like my number one game. Some like racing car games, stuff like that. And there was one point when I was in primary school and I was locked onto Mario Kart 7 like most primary school kids are. And I thought, oh my God, like I want to do this kind of work. And I didn't realize there were actual people that were behind those titles. So at that point, I really realized, this is something that I want to do. It's a real pathway and I want to see what I can do.
I love that you mentioned Ratatouille specifically because the Australian games industry, especially in the 90s, early 2000s, we developed so many licensed tie-ins in that time. I don't think the Ratatouille game was made in Australia necessarily, but many similar games with Disney licenses were. Johnson?
There wasn't really one point in time. I've always been interested in like film and media ever since I could walk, essentially. I had like a NES when it came out back in the day, so Super Mario, all that sort of stuff. And I've just been playing games ever since, so.
Similar for myself. I've been playing games since I was little. If I had to name one particular title, there was this beautiful game called Okami that came out in 2006 by Capcom. And I remember thinking it was so beautiful and so immersive. And there's something about that interactive element that pulls you into the game and immerses you in that world and lends you that escapism that really pulled me towards wanting to pursue a career in games.
Amazing. Has anyone here played Okami? Show of hands. Yep, quite a few people.
It's so good. It's so good.
The rest of you add it to your wish list.
Yeah, actually, you're going to make me think here. Look, I've been very blessed. I've been involved with sort of video games right at the very start, but I started playing pinball machines. That was my big thing. And then this small game called Space Invaders came along, and I was like, what is this? What is a pixel? And I just was absolutely enthralled, probably more so for the tech. I just couldn't believe that they had this computer in there and that they were just drawing these pixels, and I was just like, this is amazing. But that was sort of the catalyst for it, and then I just went through and bought a VIC-20. That sort of got me into to programming. But Space Invaders was the catalyst for it all, and then the whole 8-bit era, and then figuring out what sprites were. It was just like, and I've been doing it ever since. But yeah, playing games for 50 years, and I just would never do anything else. It's just in the blood. And it's very fortunate that we've been able to turn this into a wonderful business and a wonderful industry, and it's important that we keep it going.
That's great. The magic never really wears off, does it?
No, it doesn't. Once it's in the blood.
So I'd love to dig into the specifics of some of your pathways. So the three younger people in the middle of us two older gentlemen. Let's dig into some of your pathways. I know the three of you all came through education pathways, and I'd love to hear a bit more about what you studied, and if you entered into your study with games in mind. Did you go into your studies thinking about game development?
Yep, so I was basically in high school trying to work out what I wanted to do with my life, if it was a viable career path. I actually attended a 2-day workshop with CDW Studios, and they happened to be running a 3D modelling workshop. So that was where I got my hands on Sculptress for the first time. So I really enjoyed doing that. And as soon as I started, I was just like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to be a 3D artist. I just found that passion for it. So then I basically finished high school, enrolled with CDW because I was already familiar with them, and did a 3-year bachelor's degree, so the Bachelor of Creative Arts, Visual Effects, Entertainment Design. And I specialised in 3D character modelling. So they basically take you through a bunch of things, but I really fell in love with the character side of things. I didn't really know if I wanted to work in games or film at that point, but I kept hearing talks that the industry would be booming and that it would be coming, and I was coming into the right time. And we happened to open a studio as soon as I graduated, so it was a perfectly seamless transition for me.
Yeah, I had a bit more of a roundabout way of getting to where I am at the moment. I started with a 4-year degree in industrial design. I was in that for 2 years, doing a lot of freelance contract work, but it wasn't really sticking. So by the time I started going to CDW Flinders with Chiara at the same time, it was in 2019. So everything was kind of in a lull. I thought I would take a chance and just try again, do something I'd probably be more passionate about in games. So that's where I landed. At CDW, I was more interested in doing a bit of everything, so my hands were pretty much everywhere. I did environment, I did character, I did just game-specific engine stuff, and I just fell in love with just doing all of it. And it's where it got me now.
Awesome.
I had a very similar pathway to Johnson in the sense of I had a more non-linear trajectory. I actually started off studying communications and marketing, and initially started out as a copywriter at a marketing agency, and kind of just had this revelation of this is not kind of what I want to be doing. I want to just go all in on pursuing games. I had always had a propensity towards art and games, but just kind of had a little bit of hesitation around fully jumping into it. And then when I had my marketing job, I thought, you know what, I'm going to go back and study. I'm going to do what I want. And so I was in Sydney at the time and studied 3D art and game design at University of Technology Sydney, and then did some online coursework through CG Spectrum, and decided to specialize in characters and character design, and went from there.
Great. One thing I like about talking to people about their pathways into the industry is you just never hear the exact same story twice. Everyone has a slightly different route. There's not one specific answer about how to get into games necessarily. I also, when I'm talking about people's careers. I know that it's very rare for people to have their dream job be their first job. So I would love to know if the three of you worked jobs outside of games before coming to Big Ant. And if so, do you feel like you were able to carry over some of the lessons from other pathways you might have gone or other ways you had of getting income? Did you pick up any skills that you brought to Big Ant? I know when I started, I was working in Big W filling shelves, and then I sold phones for a while. It's, yeah, so I'd love to hear from each of you on that.
So my first job was actually at a fruit and veg shop, and then after that I worked at Kmart for a bit in retail. So obviously interacting with people, customer service, that helps with events like Sage today, and just the communication aspect really helps in a workplace environment. And especially having gone to uni and interacting with my peers and with instructors, just having done that basically prepared me for going into a workplace scenario. Yeah.
Cool.
I very much started out as more of a factory worker and a laborer. I used to work at a factory that does the production for the yogurt shop. After that was essentially going to industrial design and doing all that stuff. So a lot of that stuff is very similar to how we work in games. We are very much working for a client, trying to deliver a product, going through the ebbs and flows of figuring out how to get it to where people are happy with it, or where the customers are happy with what we are making. I guess that would probably be the biggest influence on how I got, how effective I've become working in games.
Great.
I would say circling back to my copywriting job, we had to have obviously a lot of written and verbal communication to make sure that things were running efficiently. And I would say that offered a lot of transferable skills into our industry, because we need to make sure that there's effective communication and problem solving and good written communication as well, to make sure that things are moving efficiently and that the pipeline is working. And I found that there was a lot of transferable skills from that previous work.
Yeah, wonderful. Mark, obviously you have a longer history with games, and I would love to ask you if what your first jobs before you were in games look like as well.
I think my very first job was I started a donut business. I started door-to-door donuts. I think I was 13 years old, and I went to the Donut King and said, "Hey, look, if I buy a tray of these, can you give me a discount? And I'll sell them and I'll pick them up every Saturday morning." And it was great. I only had to walk down 2 streets and I made $60. So I was pretty happy about that. And then after that, I went into retail. So retail was pretty good. I did a management course with David Jones. And ended up in the buying office. And at 20, they told me that I couldn't get promoted until I was 30. But it's people you meet in your life that sort of make a huge difference. And this guy said to me, "Look, Mark, we can't do anything for you, but what you should do is, I can see that you're eager and we're going to hold you up. What you should do is go and get a job do the retail, go and do the manufacturing, go and do the distribution, and understand all of the supply chain. And when you do that, you'll be ready to conquer the world." So that's what I did for the last 4 years after that. I went and did that, and then I ended up in video games as a distributor. A little thing called CD-ROMs came out. I'm like, that's it. Big shiny object, and I said, well, this is it. No one's doing it in Australia. I talked to Jerry Harvey before we had Harvey Norman, and he took them on for me, and yeah, the rest is history.
Yeah, that feels like a very direct line, and those skills are still being used by you today in the studio. I gotta say, if a 13-year-old showed up at my door with a tray of donuts, I would probably buy some today.
You should do it. Seriously, I know it's not etiquette these days, but seriously, it's no one's doing it. It's easy money.
And then you founded Impact Interactive in the 90s. You worked for Ratbag, and now you're with Big Ant and have been since 2008. In the time that you have been in the industry, Mark, have you seen the pathways that people are taking into game development change dramatically?
I actually think it's fairly significant because really back in the 90s, there wasn't a pathway. you could do a degree for programming and so on, but no one was really teaching 3D art and so on. It was a new thing. So it was very, very hard to get into. It was all about your passion. You had to do it yourself. No one could really teach you these things. However, then in the early 2000s, we started seeing educators taking on things because they found that it's not just for video games, but hang on, these skills for 3D and so on, they're applicable in other industries. And so because of that, it sort of started that movement. Programming was already a stream, but certainly from an art perspective, that wasn't available. So they started doing it. Now, today, I think it has the lowest barrier to entry to get in because you can just seriously step and do a course and get, as a graduate, get a job. That just wasn't available previously, so I think it's changed significantly. And I think the other thing is that you can do it yourself. You don't necessarily have to go and do a degree. That's an advantage, but you could sit at home. All of the programs that we're using in the office, you can learn yourself. You know, and really that's where it starts. It starts with you and your passion and putting yourself in lots of different spots to find out what you want to do. And sometimes even if you start something, you change later, and that's okay. You can. You know, we've got to spend most of our lives at work. We might as well enjoy what we do, and a big part of that is finding out what that is. But I think now is the easiest time to sort of get into the industry because there's a plethora of things. There's a lot more roles that are available. It's quite diverse. And you can also specialise. So if you really, really love a particular type of part of the game making process, then you can do it as a career.
Cool. There's some great advice built into that, and I know that if you work in games, you will have a lot of people asking you for advice about how to get into games. Yes, I'm sure a lot of people in the room are here for similar reasons. So I guess along similar lines, everyone else on the panel, when people come to you for advice about getting into games, what sort of things do you tell them?
So I basically tell them, find out what you like doing. So if you want to specialise and you love a particular thing, then specialise and just go all in studying that thing, and then you can get hired just to do that job. If you are like Johnson and want to basically dip your hands in all these different areas, then do that as well and absorb as many skills as you possibly can. It really depends on the person. But in my particular case, I thought that I was more suited to specialise and that I could really solidly focus on just doing character art. So that's basically the route that I took, and I think that, yeah, either one is viable.
I think that's a really excellent point, particularly because when you talk to people who want to get into game development, people really want to know, should I specialise or should I go broad? And everyone has a slightly different approach, and different approaches work for different people. And yeah, I think part of the joy of having a panel like this is we get to hear different perspectives. And I know I've always specialised, and in the back of my mind, sometimes I worry that I should have learned how to do more things, but I seem to be doing okay. So, Johnson, you are a bit more of a generalist. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, 100%, yes.
Yep.
My advice would honestly be just start making stuff. Like Mark said, it is easier to access all the information you can get right now on the internet. If you wanted to just start building stuff, just download Blender, go on YouTube, follow some tutorials. If you want to make a stylized house, somebody has made a stylized house and you can follow it through. It's just never been that easy. Everything is free. Blender is free. It goes through like the entire pipeline for you, so you will learn a bit of everything, and a lot of those skills are very much transferable.
Yep.
Adding on to what they said, I would say events like these are awesome to do, like network, take advantage of awesome exhibitions like these and try to make connections in the industry. It's awesome, like things like Sage are going on, and I absolutely think that's a great way to try to network and sort of make connections and what have you. And like he said, there's tons of free resources available online now. It's so easy to go and watch something and try to educate yourself and upskill. Yeah. And yeah.
Did all of you sort of have a period where you downloaded some free tools and started using them to, Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
What are some of the specific tools that you would advise people to look into? I know we've heard Blender and a few others mentioned, but just say for anyone who's writing notes.
So I would say, just based off that time in my life where I was in high school and starting out, definitely Sculptress if you want to practice sculpting, but you can't afford ZBrush or, again, the alternative Blender, because that has a bit of everything. Definitely 100% watch YouTube videos in each specific software, so you can just learn little tips and tricks, save that to playlists. I know that's something that I personally do. Pinterest is another thing for reference. Same with PureRef. It's basically a program where you've got a reference board up. You can throw as many images in there and they will all save at the same quality and resolution that you put it in. But yeah, basically just do that. Have an explore, look around, dabble in everything.
Adding on to that as well, Unreal Engine and Unity are free to use, and a lot of their own resources are extremely detailed and can get you very far. So if you really wanted to learn a game engine, that would probably be the best bet.
Say Krita as well for different 2D open software. That's a good alternative to Photoshop.
Yeah. And Mark, you would be sort of seeing how people use these tools and how that manifests in a portfolio as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that maybe have impressed you when you see them popping up in people's work?
I think the big thing, the people that tend to go a lot further with what they want to do is, one, because they've learnt what they want to do early, and that's a blessing because we don't all have that advantage that we don't figure it out until later in life. But I think the people that show initiative and do work on their own, you know, you've got to do that. People that understand that you know, when they come to work with us, is that we do realism, and that they show me a portfolio that actually is geared towards showing what they can do with realism. They're showing characters. They might show something sports related, but it shows initiative, and they're the things that tend to impress a lot, is that you can see the amount of work that they've done on their own time, because at the end of the day, you can study any course you want, but if you don't practice your art or your craft, then you're not going to be good at any of it. You know, and that's the thing. But also add one other thing is that solo development's becoming a very big thing, and that was never possible before, but it really is now. You know, one of the first things that I did like an add-on pack, and there was an old product called TrueSpace 3D, and I had to learn how to do a mesh, how to texture it, how to animate it, and then I wrote a simple copy program just to copy these levels in, and just going through that process was just eye-opening to me, and I highly suggest that you do take the suggestions you've been given with with a Unity or Unreal. Sit there and play with it, because that's what it's there to do. It's a sandbox for you to learn, and that's really where you're going to find what you want to do, and more importantly, get involved with it and get your hands dirty in doing this stuff and finding out that's what it is. It's daunting at first. Trust me, I get that, but if you don't try, then you'll never do it, and that's the thing. So just really get in there and just have a play. And once again, these things are free. Like, you know, you used to have to, like TrueSpace, I had to pay $1,000 for that program, you know. But now all of these things are free. It's just such a blessing for people that are interested in getting into video games or video like games like industries, because all of these tools are just free, and it just makes it a lot easier for you to pick up and get started straight away.
It really is incredible how much more accessible all of these things are now. Definitely when I was sort of growing up, becoming an adult, was not the case with a lot of these tools. I am about 15 years older than most of you, I think. I think also having access to a lot of these free tools makes it easier for people to sort of, you know, I think what you're looking for often in a creative career is the thing that really sparks a sort of joy inside of you, and having more access to these tools gives you that, makes it a bit easier to find that joy within yourself. Is that fair to say? Have all of you sort of had moments where you've felt that sort of that excitement of finding a thing that makes sense to you and that brings you joy?
Yeah, 100%.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll add to that is my grandfather, before he passed, he told me, just remember, I asked him, well, what's one thing you can tell me? And he said, your body grows old, but your mind doesn't. And I was like, awesome. So if you're into video games, you can get old and you're still going to be able to play them.
That is very true. So as you were saying, Mark, these days a lot of people are creating games as solo developers, or they are forming small teams and they are creating things. You're at Sage right now, so once you leave this hall, you'll be able to play many such games. Many of the teams here have formed their own independent studios and made games as small teams. So I would love to talk to all of you, because you are, of course, part of a bigger studio making higher budget games, and I would love to know about what drew you towards working at a bigger studio like Big Ant.
For me, it was job security, just like as a main thing, just stability. And also because it was an already established company, so I could just go into it and learn on the job things that I wasn't necessarily taught on in uni. As I was saying before, it's very transferable, at least in my experience. So we'd get given projects at uni, we'd complete it in a set amount of time, and then we'd get someone to review it. In the case of uni, it would be your instructor. In the case of employment, it would be like your art lead or the art director, and things would get sent off to the clients. So yeah, for me, I found it pretty easy to just assimilate into that. And I thought learning all these skills that I've learnt while employed here would be easier to then go and start up an indie company if I wanted to, rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
Yep. I was gonna say, like, doing freelance and like contract work takes a type of person. So definitely the stability, 100%. Along with that, it was a brand new studio in the Adelaide space, so I very much knew it was going to be started out as a small indie sort of vibe, because the people weren't going to be there yet. I just wanted to see how it would grow as it went through. So
Yeah.
very much that.
I would say as well, tacking on to Chiara's point about it already being an established studio, is you have so many incredibly talented people who work at our studio, and you can learn from them, and that's a huge advantage of coming into a studio like Big Ant. You can really upskill and develop new skill sets, and you learn from people with prior industry experience as well. And I found that was incredibly important to me, to go into a studio where that environment would sort of nourish other skill sets. And I'm also a big sports fanatic, so Big Ant doing sports games was immediately like a pull for me. I love American football and tennis and all that good stuff. So that was a huge appeal for me when I was looking at where to apply.
Fantastic. Are you all sports fans?
I'm a Port Adelaide fan.
I enjoy tennis.
Tennis as well, and go Crows.
How about you, Mark?
No, it's definitely Port, but anyway. Look, you don't have to be a sports fan to work at Big Ant, but obviously if you're passionate about it, it's just an extra level of joy that you get. I love sports, so I've played sports, so it was a natural fit for me. But certainly it's not something that's a prerequisite from a job perspective. So that's it. But I'll add one more thing to, working with a bigger studio. There's no reason why you can't do both. You can stabilise your income, and then you can still do your freelance stuff. So it's a good way for you to look. If you want to do your own business, look. We set the studio up here in Adelaide, really. We needed an art and animation pipeline, and we did it for the reason that we want graduates, because we want people to have we've got an ecosystem now, so you can go into uni, you can get a job, and then once again work with us for 2-3 years, and then decide what you want to do. It's your career, but it's always nice to be able to learn it from people that have sort of perfected a formula to getting and shipping games, because otherwise a lot of things, we all have great ideas, but we don't always execute them, and this is a great way to understand a pipeline of game development, and every company and every developer is different in the way that they execute their games, but certainly it's nice to understand and work through those systems, because later on, if you decide to do it yourself, you have that knowledge of how things are supposed to work, and that's a big part of it. And it's not just about the creation, but it's also about the business side. Because we've got to remember at the end of the day, video games are a business, you know. We need to feed ourselves, and therefore, while we get paid for what we love, which is awesome, you know, we've got to make sure that we understand that the economics behind these things, which I try to teach all of the staff.
Yes, I think what you're saying about learning the development pipeline is very interesting, and an experience that a lot of people don't necessarily get, because there are more people pursuing game development. There are jobs in the games industry, globally speaking, at the moment. And I know from having worked in a studio myself that really learning a lot about what a proper pipeline looks like, and how a team can sort of come together to do best practice is very valuable. One thing you have said to me before, Mark, that I really admire is that part of your hope with Big Ant is that you will have people coming through who are graduates, and they will learn these pipeline practices, and then they will go and start their own teams, make their own games, and take some of those best practices forward. I would love you to sort of talk to that, maybe a bit more of your vision for what a pathway through the industry can look like, with Big Ant being a step in a longer career.
Yeah, well, deciding on what you're going to do doesn't have to happen straight away. You need to be good at something to get the job. But once you've got the job, then you can look at the pipeline, but you can look at all of the disciplines that are in there, and once again move around. So, and that's just from the general tasks that you're doing on a daily basis, but also from a company perspective. In fact, I'll go through examples now. All three, Chiara, Johnson and Johnna, came through as juniors, and now they're not. You know, so they have now moved up a step in terms of their careers and what they're doing. And once again, they have choices to what they want to do, but then they're on a trajectory to learn as much as they can before they decide what they want to do. And these, look, I think probably the take-home message is that you can always change the path that you're on, but if you haven't tried, you don't want to be living with regret, and that's probably the big thing. So you want to get in there, give it a go, even if you fail. So what? You know, like there's the world's your oyster. Just do it, but don't live with regret, and that's the sort of the big thing for me. But getting these through, it's totally our studio here, particularly in Adelaide, is really, I really want to get as many graduates as we can through, and hopefully to spawn more indies and get more Team Cherries for tomorrow.
Absolutely. For those not aware, Team Cherry, the developer of Hollow Knight, is based in South Australia. So if you see a handful of young people walking around looking very happy and who obviously have a lot of money to throw around, could be Team Cherry.
Yes.
They're really nice, normal people, actually, all things considered. So for each of you, I would love to hear, what is your favorite thing that you have worked on at Big Ant? It could be a whole game. It could be a specific model you did, maybe, you know, a player that you really love. Could be anything. I would just love to hear about some of your favorite experiences working for Big Ant.
So for me, I mainly do kits because I enjoy that. It's a very visual part of the game. So as soon as the players come out on the field, you just see their uniform. So there have been some very interesting and very complex kits that have come through where they've got many patterns that are overlaid, lots of different colours, just an explosion of colour that they're wearing. So trying to nail that likeness just as much as characters is what I really enjoy. And in terms of a particular thing I also enjoyed, I had a love-hate relationship with making those scrum caps, the headwear for the rugby players. So they look like a basic hat. They're very, very complex. They've got many little bumps all over the place, lots of different holes. You've got to work around the ears. You've got to have it curved around the head. You've got to consider the strapping going under the chin, the buckle that goes into that. So the first one I made took around 40 hours, which was very difficult to get through because I was learning how to do it start to finish as an asset. So I obviously modelled it, textured it, did all the UVs, retopo, basically fully took it from start to finish into game. But that was very rewarding, and since then I've done 5 more, and with each one it's been exponentially quicker.
That's amazing. Basically, every asset you see in a game took much longer than anyone realizes. In terms of when you are building objects like that, Do you get sent a lot of materials that you can work from? Or do you have actual Guernseys in the office or anything like that? Or is it
We mainly just gather ref ourselves, or we
Yep.
get what's sent from those clubs, and then we also have our own like material libraries and things like that we can draw from. But in terms of creating the asset, I actually took it as a base one from AFL and adapted it, since we had no headwear for any of the rugby union or rugby league games. So all the headwear for those games that you see were the ones that I worked on.
Amazing? One anecdote I think about all the time is there was a Batman game that came out in 2009, and I remember the head of the studio bragging that there was somebody on the team who worked on Batman's cape and just his cape for a full year. And I think about that sometimes, how that guy felt by the end of that year, whether that was a fun year for him or whether that was, I imagine so.
I feel the pain with that.
All right, Johnson?
Yeah, I probably don't have one specific example, but a general one. Environment artists get a single stadium to themselves, so we see it through from start to finish. Being able to see that entire process and getting it into game is probably the biggest accomplishment we could feel. Generally, that takes 3 to 4 weeks. So start to finish, we get all the references, we build it up, we texture it, we get everything ready for it to be in game, ready for the animation and just to actually see it. So it is like ends up being our little baby, essentially. Yeah.
Have you gone to do many South Australian stadiums or fields?
I've done a bit of Adelaide Oval.
Okay.
I've helped like update that, so that's like fun. That's great.
Yep, fantastic. Do you go to Adelaide Oval and look and think, I rented that?
Oh, 100%, yeah. We had to go to Adelaide Oval to get like higher res reference. So I was in there just running around taking photos of the entire stadium. So that was a good experience.
I've done a pretty decent batch of player models and try to match their likeness throughout our different titles. And one of my favorite ones I've done is Latrell Mitchell from Rugby League. And I'm a Sea Eagles fan, but I've watched them play against the Rabbitohs, and I'm a big fan of Latrell Mitchell. So that was a cool moment for me to like get to work on him. I would say similar to Chiara, I've done a fair bunch of kits. For Tiebreak, I really enjoyed doing Casper Ruud's kit. Worked on Ben Shelton's stuff before as well, and a couple other players. Medvedev is another one. So yeah, fair bunch of kits and player likenesses.
And yeah, just tacking on with that, it's really rewarding seeing players that you've worked on or the kits that you've worked on for them doing shout outs for you. So I actually had that for Tiebreak with one of the players called Federico Coria, and he actually posted his kit in game on Instagram. So yeah, it's a really like wow moment when you see that.
Oh, that's really cool.
Actually, I'll go on back to the Adelaide studio. That was, we went out there to take these photographs, and we had there were 3 of us, and John's got these amazing cameras, by the way. He's like, oh my god, it's 40 megapixel camera, and like these shots, I'm like, and the textures that he produced from these things was absolutely incredible. But we went out there, and it was a joyous moment because we all went round, and they let me on the oval, so I had my drone. And I'm lying in the middle of Adelaide Oval, flying around with the drone. I was like, this is the best thing ever. But the second part of it is when we finish the games, it's a big moment once we've finished and we're ready to ship these things. And one year, the English cricket team was with New Balance, and they used our game to launch their new kits. And then so they launched their kits, and then we actually got down, and I got to sit there and play our game with the English cricket team. It was pretty awesome. Yeah, and I was pretty good at it, so they weren't happy.
Mark, do you have a favorite game from the time you've been at Big Ant, like a single iteration of one of these games?
Look, I like the racing games, the original sprint car games that we used to make. They were just particularly good. I like the tabletop. We did a tabletop game, which is, if people know Test cricket, it's a tabletop game that you have a little ball and a string, and we sort of replicated that. I actually really enjoyed working on that. But for me now, it's just every time we release something, it's just always looking much better, and that's the joy for me now. Is we're able to spend more time on lighting and more time on textures, and we have texture memory that we can actually use, so we can get things very close to realism, which we previously couldn't on previous consoles because we didn't have enough memory. Getting things on a Switch is tough. We have to get a 65 gig game or 68 gig game, and we have to fit it into 14 gigs on a cartridge. And that's, I know you probably don't see joy in that, but I'm like, we did that. It's quite amazing when you sort of pull off things that are really not supposed to be possible.
Absolutely. If you go and check out the Big Ant games on the show floor, I was playing the new cricket game yesterday. It looks incredible. The animations, the fidelity is so cool. I've got one last question. So for each of you, how far into the future are you planning? I know I personally have a hard time thinking beyond like a few months, but that's just me. Do you have short-term and long-term plans for what you want to do in games and how you want to get there?
For me, I just have short-term goals at the moment, and that's just learn as much as I can while I'm here, especially when you're a junior starting out. You've got the time to learn, you've got the time to ask questions. You can go to your lead for help. They can show you their workflow for things. You can go to other character artists and ask them the same thing. So yeah, I definitely took advantage of that and continue to do that. So yeah, if I've worked on kits for a long time, then I move on to heads. I learn a bit of heads. I do cricket bats. I do shin pads. Like, I've had a bit of involvement in everything in terms of the character pipeline. So my next main goal, I'd say, is hair. So just looking at our hair library, making sure we've got enough mullets for our players.
Hair has come such a long way in games as well.
Definitely, yes.
Not just a big block anymore necessarily.
Yeah. So
cool.
yeah, that's me.
Yeah, short term, long term, probably opening up my own studio, whether that be for games specifically or just selling contract work, seeing what I can get. But yeah, being my own boss, opening my own studio.
Amazing.
Long term, similar again to Chiara, I just would love to continue to upskill, continue to grow and learn as an artist and learn from the people around me and get better. And as a character artist, I'm always trying to learn more about anatomy, practice, again, learn from the people around you when you get the chance and go from there. Long term, I'm certainly committed to staying in the industry and want to continue to grow and learn. And that's the path that I would love to continue pursuing.
Fantastic. How about you, Mark?
I'm always a long-term thinker. I like my 10-year plans because it takes a long time for things to fall into place. But I'm really happy. I'm just so happy at the moment where we are as a company and what we've been able to do, and we've been able to sponsor events like this. This was not possible a decade ago. So now we can start giving back and start training graduates and start help building the industry. That's a big thing for myself and Ross. We're doing the same thing in Melbourne. Our planning, we always plan. We've already got plans past 2032. In terms of our development schedules, we're getting a lot of games out. I think we have to get out 7 games in 2027, so it's going to be a big year. We've got a couple of new franchises, and that's the exciting thing, is we want to sort of get more franchises into the company, grow the company, and once again, hopefully it's a home to many. Like you said, Johnson, if we can help you and get that understanding there and you start your own studio, that's absolutely fantastic, and that's really the goal.
7 games in 1 year is huge.
I'm freaking out.
Yep. I'll have to make sure every time I see you that year I buy you a coffee. Well, thank you so much. Big Ant has been so instrumental in making sure that Sage happens every year and in supporting the local game industry. So it's been really fantastic to be able to talk to all of you this morning. Thank you so much for your time and your input and your knowledge. That is, I think we have reached the end. If anyone has any questions, maybe come up and ask them afterwards. We only do 45-minute panels, so there's not time for a formal Q&A. Great, if you could all join me in applauding our guest, that would be lovely.